we're going to talk about this morning. We are officially making this available, release 10 of RxG, tomorrow. I think that it's going to be available generally to everybody on our release site next week on Monday, we said, right? So for those of you that are in the OEM program, you'll be able to download this off of our builds or get one of us get it to you. Everyone else, you get the button on Monday. This will be ready. What is in this? What have we been working on for a year and change? Well, the biggest change is, of course, the underlying operating system. We've moved up from FreeBSD 10 to FreeBSD 11. There are many changes, more than I could possibly tell you about if I spent all day talking about it. But you know that's always true, right? I can talk to you guys for days, hours, and whatever on end. I just want to talk about these 4 key things that we've changed, which is why you want to go and make this upgrade. With VMXNet 3, when you install RxG as a virtual machine, we've finally gotten done what you guys have been asking us to do forever, which is to have a link at 10 gigabits per second. Now, we all know that nobody actually uses a 10 gigabit per second link, but when it links at 10 gigabits per second, that makes all the difference in the world to the sale, right? Because they want to know that that links up at 10 gigabits per second, even though they always use, what, like 200 megs in this case, right? So we've got the ability so that now, on VMware, you know, you've always had the 10 gigabit ports. The way we've dealt with this in the past is we've built clusters inside the hosts, right? Now what we're doing is we've got the 10 gigabit ports and we've got a 10 gigabit virtual network adapter. Theoretically, this is supposed to give us a lower load on a physical host and higher throughput per OS image. Theoretically. We have not had a lot of mass deployments of this yet. Everything large scale of ours is still obviously running on E1000, right? So getting started with this, I suggest you start small, see how it feels. Things that we have realized that goes wacko with this is the PCI bridge stuff. Those of you that were in the HA track yesterday saw that ad nauseum, right? What happens is that network adapter 1 does not equal VMX0 some of the time. Actually, a lot of the time. And getting that straight is kind of a pain in the butt. And what we've found is that with EM so far, that's obviously not true. Right? So your mileage may vary. Get started. Start with machines with only 4 interfaces, right? Move up from there, but it does link at 10 gigabits per second, which is what everyone wants to see. They want to go into the console, you can go to instruments interfaces, you can see it says it 10 gigabits per second. ZFS. This is the main reason that we're asking you all to move up to this with the reinstall. As you know, we've been doing this for a long time. This is the first time in 11, actually longer than that if you count the other iterations of this product. As a 3rd gen product alone, we've been doing this for like 11 years now. We have never asked you to reinstall ever. The reason why that is just because we're just upgrading the RxG software. That's what we do. If we have to, the RxG software will drag in the operating system update with it, right? We've been doing that forever. But this time we're going to ask you to reinstall. The reason for that is because the base operating system that we're putting on has the ability to do ZFS. ZFS is a new file system. It is an exadbyte file system. In other words, each file can go up to, I think it's 2 to the 64 bits or some crazy thing like that, which hopefully we'll never need. That, of course, has lots of obvious implications, right? When you can get files that big with all of the kinds of storage that we do with respect to long-term processing of PF logs and things like that, right? But in the short term, what we're talking about is that we can pool storage. So everybody in this room that's got more than 100 RxGs deployed, you've all seen what it says something like /space is out of space, right? The most wacky statement that we've ever come up with for a health notice. /space is out of space. Why is /space out of space? Because /space is a partition on an FFS volume, right? And what we've done here is by moving to ZFS, instead of having partitions, the entire drive is essentially one partition, if you want to think of it that way. And we can apply quotas to each one of the subsets of it. And what happens is that you end up with a situation where /space is never out of space, unless you run out of space like for real, like the drive is full. In which case, you've probably done something wrong in the beginning. Right? So that whole /space is out of space thing is gone, assuming you do this. We also have the ability to do logical volume management. Currently, this is only on the CLI. I know you guys have asked for this forever. You want to be able to do RAID 1, you want to be able to do striping. When you go and you throw 3 SSDs in there, you've always told us about that. You can do that right now on the CLI. Eventually, we'll get to adding it to the GUI, especially when you guys bitch at us enough about this. But for now, it's on the CLI. Interesting thing. Not only can you do that, theoretically, you can grow. Theoretically, right now, if you were to install a machine with 11.1 on one SSD, and it's never usually 5 weeks, but usually like 5 months later, some dude shows up and says, I need the DMCA notice from 7 months ago, which of course you don't have, because you spec'd it for 1 month of storage, right? So what you're going to do, in the past, what we've had is we have to blow the machine away to step. Theoretically, you could shut the machine down, put another SSD in, power it back up, run a CLI command, and then the file system will actually stand for that. Theoretically. We've never actually tried this in production, but it should work. We expect to have the GUI stuff of this done sometime Q1 next year. So hopefully when we meet sometime in 2019, we'll have said that all of the GUI for all of this is now ready. Is my pen not happy? No, my pen is not happy. So, yeah, the ZFS also includes a kind of crazy level of data integrity. You all know that when you write things to a hard drive, like sometimes the bits get lost, right? And then what gets crazier is that you don't know it got lost, right? So you'll write a bazillion ones, a bazillion years, and some of those will just get flipped, and you don't know. The interesting thing about ZFS is that it integrates data integrity into it, and it has a copy on my transactional object model. So everyone, once again, if you've had more than 100 RHDs in the field, you've certainly seen it happen, where when power is lost, you lose the password file, right? Every one of you has got 100 machines out there, has seen that. And the only way that the only mitigation to that we've really told you is, well, you should have UPS, right? Theoretically, with this copy on my transactional model, that should never happen anymore. This being said, deploying RHDs without UPSs is obviously a recipe for disaster, so we still believe in doing that. But it should happen less. Every single write has checksum stored with it. This takes care of bit rot, and hopefully within the next quarter or so, we'll integrate that into the health notices as well. Once you start seeing a certain level of bit rot, that means your SSD needs to be replaced, right? So we hope to be able to have up front more information about when that needs to happen. Performance. ZFS has a collapsed cache. So in operating systems, you know, there's like a cache for a cache, and then the cache for the cache for the cache, and the cache for the cache for the cache for the cache, right? So what they've done with this is they've kind of collapsed all in one place, and we've changed the tuning on the FreeBSD side to take advantage of that better with respect to the kinds of machines that you guys are building, right? Constantly I have people come to me asking, Simon, can I build a machine with 128 gigs of RAM and you use that effectively, right? Well, we've come up with a few ways to use it more effectively. One of which is this ARC. In theory, things should go faster. You should get a more responsive console. You should get a more responsive squid cache on all the machines that you've got deployed. Here. Also includes transparent compression. This probably is the thing that affects you guys the most. When you store a PF connection log, that is pure text, right? So in theory, you should be able to increase the history length that you've got using exactly the same hardware, just by reinstalling from 10.1 to 11.1. So whereas before, if you operated, you got like 3 months worth of PF connection log history for the DMCA violation notices, maybe you might get double that. The mileage may vary, you gotta see. Interesting thing that also happens is there's a dramatically reduced storage requirement on the per node basis when you're going and doing clustering. This is especially important when you're deploying clusters, whole clusters inside a single host. So you build one monster machine with 256 gigs of RAM and like 128 cores, right? You put inside that a CC, a V4, right? A CC and 4 operating system nodes, right? How much disk space did each one of those nodes take in the past? If you had 1,000 SUO. You had to put it in a license calculator, right? It's at 277 gigs. But we all knew that that was kind of like false, right? Because all the storage was on the CC. What we're saying now is that each one of those 4 cluster nodes, you can make it a lot smaller. No performance impact. So all of this shouldn't actually slow anything down. So that's where we're at with the ZFS. That's the main reason why we're asking for the reinstall. Other reasons coming soon. Well, hopefully we'll be able to do a true snapshot soon. We can do it with the CLI right now. We haven't quite worked out on the GUI exactly how that's going to fly, but the idea is we should be able to instantaneously, in the GUI, press a button and slide you back in time. Now, I hate to use the example of that Windows tool that does that, but it's sort of that is the idea. If you knew you had an absolutely completely working config at some point in time, how would you get back to that right now with RxG? Well, you had to have taken a backup, right? And then you're going to go and put that file into the GUI, hit the restore button. Sometimes that kind of takes some time. We're talking about some of the really big sites, like the Atlanta airports and stuff like that. That takes like 5 hours, something like that, right? So what we're talking about is the ability to, at an Atlanta airport-sized site, at an Indian Wells tennis garden-sized site, to be able to move back instantly. We should be able to do remote synchronization at some point as well, coming soon. And obviously, like I said, we're going to integrate logical volume management into GUI at some point, hopefully by Q. We changed the front end. Some of you have seen this already that have gotten early access to this. We've been running Pound forever, and we've moved to Nginx. So instead of Light and Pound, we got one thing. The reason we did this is largely because we've gotten the requests from you guys. A few of you came to us and said, you're using our web proxy on the front end, doing exactly what we asked you to do. No port forwards, right? We don't like port forwards. We asked you to go and put your infrastructure on a separate DNS name, somewhere on the southbound side, right? You guys did that, and then you told me that I'm full of shit because it doesn't work. Occasionally you do, and WebSocket and stuff like that. All fixed now. Also, hopefully by Q1, we'll be able to do the multiple SSL certificate thing. Right now, every one of you that does that, that's doing it effectively, you got to use a wildcard, right? Only way. Some of you are going and doing multi-tenant stuff these days, and you're doing like completely different end domains with the multiple tenants. So, I got your back. I've always got your back, just like you've always had yours. We're going to get this done, hopefully, Q1, Q2, certainly before the next time we meet. Unless magically, we do so much business together, we're meeting in 6 months. Wouldn't that? The year's cool. Another thing that's changed. This is actually something that was not paid for by us. We're just leveraging someone else. It's one of the great things about taking part in an open source ecosystem. This was paid for by the guys that do PF Sense. You know, those guys that everyone always says that, oh, we copied their shit when it was backwards. So they added the ability to do these AES-NI instructions in the kernel of FreeBSD. And that means that when you run certain kinds of hardware, this stuff or this stuff, the IPsec engine, and now something we're going to announce, the OpenSSL engine, goes faster. 6x performance gain is what we've seen fast. Huge benefit for the web server, the IPsec VPN, and the OpenSSL VPN that we're going to tell you about today. All you got to do is run bare metal on these things, which if you're running on something other than that, I don't know what you're doing, so it should be all good, right? All you got to do is get this new OS on there, and I know it's a big ask. Especially some of you that got 1,000 machines out there that we're reinstalling them one by one, but we believe that this is worthwhile. I would not be here asking you to do this unless I truly believe that this was worthwhile. And so with all of these changes, we think, that we'll be set up for a long time. Maybe more than 10 years next time. We'll see. We've only asked you to do this once, so I know it's a pain, but I hope that you see that the benefits outweigh that.